Hello everyone and welcome to Programming and Access 2013, the Advanced course. My name is Steve Bishop, and in today's video we're going to be talking about using ADO record sets. Now in the previous video we talked about how to establish a connection to SQL Server using the ADO connection objects. And what we're going to do in this video is once you've got that connection established to the SQL Server, you're going to need to use record sets to retrieve information from those from that database. So you can edit data, view data, that sort of thing. So ADO record sets are the method, the object that you use in order to view the data on the actual SQL Server. So you need to make sure you've seen that previous video about how to connect to the SQL Server before you can really dive into using the record sets themselves. Okay, now this is not going to be a complete overall. Here is every single thing that you can find in ADO record sets. This is just going to be enough information to help you get started on, on retrieving information from your ADO record sets and how to update that information and store that information. So let's go ahead and hop out here. And hopefully you're at least at this point, which is where we set up that ADO-DB connection. And we used a connection string that was an ODBC driver to open up that connection to our SQL Server backend. And we have this do while loop, which is going through and waiting until our connection state is good to that SQL Server before we can continue on. If there was a problem connecting to the database, then the ADO state would be 0. Now all of this is predicated upon this on error resume next, because if there's an error, we don't want it to show any runtime errors. But since we're going to be doing the programming here and we're going to do some testing, I'm going to go ahead and comment out the on error resume next so that if there are any problems, we'll be able to handle those. And then once I'm sure everything is right and written correctly, then we'll go ahead and turn this back on. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is create ourselves an ADO record set object. So we're just going to go ahead and dim ADO rec as new ADO DB record set. Okay, so just again make sure that you have in your references you have the ActiveX data object 6.1 library selected, or maybe you have the 6.0 library. Just make sure it's already turned on. You could, of course, do, just like I explained in the last video, you could actually make this a late binding object. So if you wanted to, you could just say this is an object, and then you're going to do a set command here, ADO rec equals new ADO DB record set. Okay, if you, I'm sorry, that's not correct. It would be create object. Boy, where was I going with that? Create object. There we go, ADO DB. And then it would be record set. Okay, this would be another way. This is the late binding method of how you can instantiate your object to that ADO DB library. So just again to make things simpler, I'm going to go back here and do this as a record set up here, so it's fully instantiated with the new statement up there. Now, what we're going to do here is we need to associate this record set with a connection, because the record set needs to know where it's going to be pulling its record information from, and that would be this ADO con connection. So we need to assign that, and the way you assign, since this is an object, okay, and you're assigning, you're needing to assign this connection object to a property of the ADO rec, you're going to need to use the set keyword. So set ADO rec, and the property of the ADO rec is the active connection. Okay, that is, what is the connection that should be active for this record set? And now we can assign it to the ADO con. Okay, so that is going to be our active connection for our ADO record set. Now once that's done, we should probably also do something which is something you don't normally have to do in DAO, and that is specify what type of record locking should be active on this record set. In other words, when you want to access a particular piece of data and you want to update that record, you kind of want to make sure you're not conflicting those updates with other people. In the past, with the DAO, we did a DB read-only or a DB C changes, that sort of thing. Well, in ADO, it's a little different. You have to actually tell it what type of record locking you want it to have. So we're going to do ADO rec, and it's going to be, I forgot the property off the top of my head, doggone it. Is it, there we go, lock type. That's what we're looking for, lock type. So the ADO rec lock type, we need to specify, is it going to be batch optimistic? Is it going to be optimistic? Is it pessimistic? Is it read only? Essentially what this boils down to is the batch optimistic is saying, think of it this way, I'm optimistic that no one else is going to change this information. Okay, so a batch optimistic basically means I'm going to commit all of my changes all at once. Okay, so don't make my changes one at a time. I want you to hold on to all of the changes in my record set, and before committing them to the SQL Server, I want you to just hold on to them and then all at once then submit my changes to the SQL Server. So that's probably the most, there's the potential for the most disaster. If you are going to just be utilizing this database all by yourself, no one else is going to be using it, then that should be fine. But if somebody else is changing data in the background, you could end up overwriting that information before you even know that it's been changed. So typically the lock batch optimistic is not the best idea. Lock optimistic is not too bad because it just basically means I'm pretty optimistic that when I make the change to this one record and then I'm going to go update it, it's really kind of a simultaneous thing. As soon as I need to change the data, I want you to commit it. But it means that I'm optimistic that no one else is going to access that information while I'm currently in it. The lock pessimistic basically means whatever you do when I am in a record, do not let anybody else even see this record. Okay, they can't get to it unless they're in read only. They can't make changes to it. They won't be seeing any changes to it themselves. You're basically locking them from being able to see anything happen at all. And that just basically means, that you are fully confident. That's a good confident way of saying, I know that as soon as I make a change, it's not going to interfere with anything anybody else is doing. So that's probably the safest route to go. But I generally find that AD lock optimistic is the most reasonable. And of course, if you do the read only, then you're just going to be reading the data and you're never going to be updating it. So therefore, there's really no worry or need to be concerned about whether or not somebody else is accessing the data. So we're going to do lock optimistic. And now that we've set the optimistic, the record lock type, and we've told it what the connection is, we can go ahead and instantiate. We can start our actual record set. So we're going to go ahead and open it. So it's fairly similar to what we saw with the connection, right? You set your properties, including the object that is your active connection, and then you just tell it, okay, now open. Now that I've set all of those properties up, go ahead and open. And now, after this command is run, our record set is open. It's going to go out and retrieve all of the records that we want. But we've got a problem here, don't we? We haven't told it what we want to open. What is going to be the data? Okay, so there's a couple of different places you can do this. You can either do this actually as part of the open command. So if I went to do select customer from customers, okay, so that's just so everybody can see this and we're on the same page. I'm sorry, it's supposed to be company, not customer. Select company. Okay, so we're going to select company from the customers table. So it's this company column here from the customers. And so that would be all that we would really need to do with that open. We can specify, notice that similar to how we had with the open command up here, we could pass in a bunch of parameters and not have to preset all these properties. Well, the open command for record sets is very similar. We can see here we can specify what the active connection is. So we could say ADCon, okay, or ADOCon. We could then specify our cursor type, right? So here is our Oh, actually, that's a different thing. Sorry, that's that's something else to go over a little bit later. But here's our AD lock batch optimistic, pessimistic batch. So read only, all that good stuff. So you can see that you can pass along the same type of information with this open method as we kind of did up here in the connection method. But I really do like the idea of presetting this information. So what we're going to do is we're going to do ADO rec. This is before the open command. And what we're going to do is we're going to pass in the source is going to be equal to this select statement. Okay, and then we can go ahead and do our ADO rec open. So there we go. We can specify all of these properties first, then select open, and that will now open up our record set. All right, so I could go ahead and run this just to make sure everything works, but I want to go a little bit further here before we get too far. I want to go a little bit further here so that we have something to look at and we can see the data and make sure that it's working. So we'll do a do while, or actually do until ADO rec EOF, which is a simple standard loop that we do that you guys should be accustomed to with the DAO as well. So ADO rec move next, right? And since we're going to be doing a move next, we should probably go ahead and make sure that we're starting at the beginning of the record set. So we're going to do if ADO rec EOF, oops, excuse me, if not ADO rec EOF, then ADO rec move first. There we go. So we want to move that record set cursor to the first stage there. Then we're going to loop through and we'll just do a debug print. And let's go ahead and print out to our immediate window here. Let's print out what that company name is going to be. And similarly to how we did the DAO record sets, we're just going to do ADO rec. And we could either do with an exclamation point company, or the other popular way to do it is to do in parentheses and quotation marks company. Okay, so you could do it either way. That's perfectly fine. And let's go ahead and I'm going to put a breakpoint here. We'll do ADO test, and we'll just step through the code here. So we're establishing our connection. We're making sure our connection state is good, and sure enough, it hopped on down because we got to a connection state of 1. Now we're setting our active connection to the connection that we created up here. Set the lock type to lock optimistic. Set our source to the customers table. Go ahead and open that record set, and it looks like we opened successfully because we didn't get any sort of runtime errors. It's checking now if we're at the end of the file, which means were there any records at all that were found? If so, then move to the first record. And sure enough, we're moving to the first record, so that means there was successful data loaded. Now do until we reach the end of the record sets, and here is company A, company AA, B, BB, C, etc. So you can see, I'll just let it finish out here, there's a similar flow to the way that ADO record sets can be managed to what you do with DAO. There's a few extra things that you have to be concerned about, like the lock type, and you actually have to be very specific about what the connection is that you're using with your record set, which isn't too different than what you did with the DAO, but you just go about setting its, you set it here as part of an actual set command where you're setting the active connection object equal to, or the active connection property equal to an object, which is the connection. It's a little different than the DB or than the DAO version. And I hope you guys can see there's a certain elegance, I think, to this, to having all of these things be specific, and you can change and modify a lot of the ways that record sets and connections are managing how they interact with your database, much more so than what you get with DAO. So I promised you that I would show you also how to make changes to the information. One of the commands that you're probably going to want to know how to do is, rather than looping through everything to try to find a particular record, let's go ahead and use a searching mechanism, right? That would be ADO rec, and then we'll do find. And this is, again, a little different than the DAO, where we had find first, find last, that sort of thing. The find method on a record set, you just need to pass in the criteria, but you can only pass in, unfortunately, one piece of criteria. You can't use, multiple. Well, so far as the literature says, and I haven't really tested this to be honest with you, you can only use one particular piece of criteria. So that would be something like company equals, we'll do company CC, okay? And this needs to be in apostrophes because that is a text. Okay, and do we want to skip any records? No, I'm just going to leave that blank. And do we want to search backward or forward? Well, we want to search forward. And then we need to also establish a start position, which is going to be 1, the first record in our record set. So there we go. Now, once we find a record, we want to change this. Let's say I want to change this company CC to company DD. So we'll say if ADO rec, if not ADO rec EOF, because if the find command runs through and it doesn't find any records matching, it will go all the way, it'll move the cursor all the way to the end of the file. So then we can go ahead and make our changes if we're not at the end of the record set. So we know that we have in fact hit upon a company that matches company CC. So now we can go ahead and make our change. And in DAO record sets, you would do something like ADO rec and then edit, right? You would do an edit command, and then at the end you would do ADO rec update, right? Well, you don't have to do the edit at all in ADO. There is no need for the edit method, because by default, when you have the lock optimistic lock type set for your ADO record set, that means as soon as the cursor moves to that record set, it's in edit mode. Okay, it's always in edit mode. So you do want to be careful. We're going to do ADO rec and the name of the field, which is company. Okay, and we're going to set the value of it equal to company DD. Okay. Now one last thing, because I just realized that I made a slight error here. Actually, we don't want the apostrophes. I did notice that I forgot one other thing. Before you can issue this find method, you need to make sure that you are in fact moved to the beginning. You move your cursor to the very beginning of the record set. So we need to do if not ADO rec EOF, then we want to go ahead and ADO rec move first. Okay. So we're moving the record set to the first record, then we're going to do a find starting from the first record from where the cursor is, and then we're going to go through and check if we did find anything, then go ahead and change the company from what it was company CC, we're changing it to company DD, and then the update command does go ahead and commit that change to our SQL database. So hopefully everything in here should work properly. And now when I run this query here and we look at company, let's take a look here, company CC here, we should get a change from company CC to company DD. So let's go ahead and take a look at how that's going to go. ADO test. Let's cross your fingers, right? Well, you know what? Let's do a debug compile. All right, looks like we got it. So, all right, let's give her a shot here. We'll do, all right, so we've got ADO test. And we're going to skip to the next step. All right, so we're setting the connection string, opening the connection state is good. Now we're going to set the active connection property to that ADO connection that we've opened up. We're setting the lock type to lock optimistic. Select company from customers. Open our record set now. And now if we are not at the end of the file, move to the first record. Okay, and then now we can do our find. And item found in collection corresponding to the recorded name in ordinal. Item cannot be found in the collection corresponding to the requested name or ordinal. did I get oh, yep, there we go. Company. Ha ha ha. I wonder, some of you guys probably caught that before when I was mistyping it, huh? All right, so F8, there we go. And do we get to the end of file? Hopefully we don't. Hopefully there is some sort of match found. And sure enough, there was. So it's going to go ahead and let me change the record that we're on, since this find command moved the cursor to this record where we found company CC. And we're doing an AD rec. We're going to change the company field to company DD, and then commit those changes using the update command, and we're set. So let's go ahead and open up our SQL Server, and we'll do a quick little search for a quick little select on the customers table again, and hopefully company DD is in fact what we've got. There we go. So there we've gone and updated that information. Now, if you wanted to add information, it's really not too difficult. You can just do something along the lines of, let's comment all that good stuff out. So ADO rec add new, and you can select the field and values if you wanted to, or you can go ahead and do something like ADO, let's see, ADO rec add new. We'll do ADO rec update. And I need to see what are the keys on here. I need a customer primary key. What is my primary key? I think it's probably going to be the ID here, huh? It's probably just going to be automatically set. So we can go ahead and create a new one. We'll call this one ADO rec. We'll set the company equal to Steve's company, right? Let's see if I do this correctly here. All right, so we'll set that to Steve's company. Yeah, okay, so my primary key is just the ID. Okay. So let's give this a try, shall we? All right, hopefully there aren't any other constraints on there. I didn't think so. And Steve's company, update. Let's take a look and see what we've got now. See if Steve's company is in fact listed in there. And sure enough, there we go. There's our new company added to the customers list. So there you go. Obviously I didn't set anything else in there, but I certainly could if I just added it, to my list in here, right? And of course I would need to add those fields up here in my source, because right now it's just the company as as part of my select statement. So there you go. Hopefully you guys were able to follow along with all that mumbling and jibber jabber that I gave, but I think you guys have a pretty good idea now how you can use the ADO record set in order to go and do a search, iterate through them using the loop, the standard loop that we should be used to by now, because we do the same type of thing with DAO record sets. Or you can update the information like we had here, and just make sure that if you're going to be using that find command, that you're moving to the record, you're moving the cursor to the first record in the record set, and then you do your find, and make sure you do the complete selection here. I found some problems if you don't set all of these parameters, so just make sure you do that. Okay, so there you go, folks. Again, if you have any questions about this video, please feel free to leave a comment in the comment section, and don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe.